Etobicoke for the past 16 years. He is doing a speech from Advanced Toastmaster Manual, and the objective of his speech is to be a humorous speech, and he's supposed to have jokes, anecdotes, and stories. The title of his speech is Measure Twice, Cut Once, and the timing is 5 at green 5 minutes, 6 yellow, and 7 red. If you could please help me in welcoming Ken Weinberg for his speech entitled Measure Twice, Cut Once.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I wanted to speak with you today about the fabulous new house my wife and I just finished building, a 2-story house on the foundations of our bungalow. Conventional wisdom says that it's inappropriate to boast about your possessions or tell people how much you spend for things. Well, anybody who knows me very well knows that I'm rather unconventional. And, well, after what I've been through, I would be the first to admit that I'm not very wise. I won't apologize for the fact that my wife and I are dinks. Dinks, D-I-N-K-S, spells dual income, no kids. So it's not surprising that we've been saving our money for a long time. And for that reason, we were able to afford such a crazy idea as building a big house. Didn't hurt that for several years I worked in the high-tech industry, and the stock options were way more than my salary. And for a couple of years at the beginning of this century, I was a globe-trotting internet trainer, highly overpaid on my own. So, what did we do with our money? Well, we bought this house about 15 years ago, and they always tell you, before you make any major changes to your house, to live in it a couple of years and see what works and what doesn't work. Well, we took 15 years. Some might call us lazy, but we aren't using that excuse. But what happened over the 24-month period of this renovation would make an excellent reality TV show that you may have seen, some of the makeover shows. And I thought about some of the titles for this makeover show that might be appropriate. One might be Buyer Beware. I like the one, Easy Come, Easy Go. And there were times when I really felt Bait and Switch would have been a good name for it. Pay Now, Pay Later, because it did cost a lot. And, well, actually, more recently, it sort of felt like Destination Divorce. But I hope that it doesn't lead to that. Although a lot of the contractors that came into our house referred to the white powder that settled on our furniture as divorce dust. And I'd imagine it does happen from time to time. So with all the makeover shows on TV, you probably think that all you have to do is go to a spa for a few days, and you come back and you have this beautiful palace just waiting for you. And I hate to tell you this, but it certainly doesn't happen like that at all. We learned pretty quickly after buying our bungalow that it would be not worth putting a lot of money into it, because it's small, but in a nice neighborhood, and we like the people in the vicinity. So we thought about what we were going to do over the years, and I think we thought too much about it, because when we sat down with the design build firms that would help us realize our dream within our budget, we were well out of our budget. So it became a question of, well, what can we give up? Well, what you have to do in a situation like that is you have to follow the logical plan. You have to have your lists, the needs and your wants. You have to have your budget. You have to interview your contractors very carefully. By the time we were ready to actually make a decision, it was actually too much to decide. We had too much stuff, too, because to do a renovation like this, we had to get out of our house. We were ripping the roof off for our house, gutting the main floor, building a second floor, redoing the whole first floor and putting another roof on it, knocking down the garage, building up another garage. There's no way we could live there. Although we did suggest that maybe we could camp a trailer in the backyard, but the contractor would have none of that. I think he was more worried about his own liability than the fact that we would freeze, because this project started in September. September might not be the best time to start a renovation of this size. But Jason, our builder, assured us that he only needed a couple of months to demolish and build the shell of our new house, and the rest of the work would take place in the warm confines of our outside house. Little did we know that this would be the worst weather for fall and winter in the last 30 years. The poor guys who were working on our house had to put up with rain and snow and wind and ice and freezing temperatures. And you can tell when they were cold by how close the bricks were together and how comfortable they were when it wasn't cold by how far apart the bricks were. I think it's, imagine, I don't feel like bending all the way down there to get a lot of mortar. I'm just going to keep slapping the bricks on there until this wall is done so I can get the hell out of here. Well, we caught as many things as we can along the way, and it certainly was, although we had a general contractor, it was very much hands-on, as much as we could be. In order to supervise this project as closely as we needed to, we had to live somewhere that was reasonably close. We sent the word out to all our neighbors, anybody have an apartment they could rent? And word came back to us that there was a basement apartment for rent 2 doors down. You could see our construction project in the backyard where we were renting. So that worked out very, very well. And how hard could it be to live underneath a rabbi and her husband and their 2 boys? What would you expect? It would be perfect, right? Well, I'm afraid to say this, but it was anything but perfect. The rabbi and her husband weren't the problem, but the boys. One of them fashioned himself to be a ballet dancer. And where do you think he practiced his ballet moves? Of course, right over our bedroom at the worst hours possible. And the other son, whenever he had the place to himself, or so he thought, he would practice being an opera singer, but he couldn't hold a tune. And the insulation between our 2 units was terrible, so it was not pleasant at all. But the 2 houses were close enough together. We had a spacious basement, half the garage, half of the driveway, and anytime we needed any religious counseling, we just had to knock on the door, and there was our friendly rabbi. But that winter, oh my goodness, that winter was cold. Based on Environment Canada reports, it was some of the worst snowfall we've seen in a long time, and we were so hoping that our roof didn't collapse. But there were times when partial construction of a part of our house led to some water getting in. And fortunately, there was nothing in there that could suffer from water damage, so it wasn't as bad as we had anticipated. But we still had to be hands-on, and all along the way, we had to deal with plumbing issues, electrical issues, painting and trim problems, tiling issues, hardwood floor, carpet, fixtures, cabinets, counters, central vac alarm system, and heating problems. You know, you think you're going to get your general contractor to look after all these things, but if we had, it would have been more expensive, taken more time, and it wouldn't have been anything close to what we wanted. Now comes to discussing the finances. He gave us a price for the demolish, the build, and a budget for a whole bunch of things that we would make choices from, like what plumbing fixtures, what lighting fixtures, and so on. But when it came down to picking all these fixtures, we couldn't get anything to come in on budget. Even the cheapest Canadian Tire plumbing fixtures would have been more expensive than he had budgeted for. So when we went into this thinking, this is the price it's going to cost us, and it came in 25% more, it was a big, big hardship. So anyone who's involved in a reno or considering a reno in the near future, I have 4 tips for you. Number 1, makeover shows. Don't believe anything you see on makeover shows. They have teams of people working during the commercial break perfecting those interiors and exteriors so that it looks like those heavily made up models that introduce the show are actually doing the work, but they're not. Debbie Travis knows how to hold a brush, and that's about it, I'm sure. Number 2, budgets. Add 15 to 20% and expect a lot of unexpected things. Number 3, timing. If you have the right contractor and you can nail down most of the decisions before they break ground, you can actually build a 2-story house in 6 months. We moved out the 1st of September, we moved in the 1st of March. It can be done. But my most important piece of advice for someone who's thinking of doing what I did, no, it's not do it yourself, and it's not measure twice and cut once. It's 2 words. The 2 words are move instead. Madam Toastmaster.
Thanks, Ken. That was a great speech. I'm sure we all learned a lot about home renovations, and maybe it's not the best idea all the time. It was a really interesting journey that you brought us through your home renovations. And it sounds like it was quite an accomplishment when you finished it. So if you could all just take a moment.